Hey everyone, World War Z Aftermath is finally here, and as you may know, I've been a big fan of the game, so let's take a look and see if the expansion is worth playing for both new and returning players. And even if you don't get the expansion, there is a free update that adds new things for everyone, so we'll go over all of that today in the review. As always, if you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. I'm really trying to grow the channel, and subscribing will help me do bigger and better things in the future, so thank you to everyone who has subscribed so far. With that said, let's get into it. And of course, there's a ton to go over as there's new levels, a new class, and a ton more. For starters, whether you just own the base game or the Game of the Year edition, purchasing the Aftermath expansion will make your game current with all previously released DLC. This was a really good move, as splitting the player base is never a good thing, so if you don't own the first expansion, you have even more new maps to try out. While I did buy the expansion on PC, I did also try out the free update on PS5, so I'll be going over that as well. I think for the most part the new levels will be the biggest addition, so let's take a look at those first. We get to visit two new areas, Vatican City and the Russian peninsula of Kamchatka. Both areas feature 3 maps each and 4 new characters for Vatican City. In Kamchatka, we actually meet up with our previous protagonists from the Japan levels outfitted with new gear so they can survive the harsh winter. I have to say, whatever the level designers for World War Z are making, they deserve a raise. They have consistently gone above and beyond in the level design department, and Aftermath is no different. It's truly remarkable how they were able to take the game that is now almost 2 years old and think of new and inventive ways to use existing gameplay mechanics while adding in a few new ones to add in extra layers of challenge. In Vatican City, you start off at the Basilica de Santa Anna, make your way to the Vatican, and then finish things off with an epic climatic battle at the Colosseum. The developers were able to take all of the best aspects of the original maps and find new and inventive ways to utilize them. And I really didn't think they could find a way to top the prior horde defense spots, but somehow they did. Combat arenas are huge, with many of them having multiple locations that you need to defend. One of the standout moments is when you have to defend a house that you reach after navigating through a graveyard filled with a thick fog. The house has 2 floors and multiple entry points, making it so you need to pay attention to all of your surroundings. And of course, to make things even more tense, you or one of your teammates will have to rush out to find generator parts while the horde is swarming the house. In Kamchatka, the cold is as much of an enemy as the Zeeks. You start off in search for fuel to survive the cold, and end up teaming up with the Russians to connect your settlement to their nuclear submarine's power grid. And of course it ends in an over-the-top battle with zombies, and I couldn't ask for anything more. Through the Kamchatka levels, battling the cold becomes a new gameplay mechanic as it is so cold out that it can become deadly. There's a few puzzles revolving around you having to find heat sources while fending off zombies and finding objectives. I played through them on insane difficulty, and I can't wait to play through them on extreme, as these maps should provide some of the best challenge the game has yet to offer. Traveling through the maps also provides new experiences, as you will have to defend an APC through the Vatican City streets, find your way through flooded crypts, melt frozen doors with a flamethrower, and more. There's also several smaller horde defense spots throughout the maps, giving them a great pacing with the mix of exploration and combat. And for those who do like exploring the maps for hidden resources like myself, you should really enjoy the new levels as they have more hidden passageways than some of the previous levels. I obviously don't want to spoil everything about the new maps, but suffice to say, the new maps are really the highlight of the expansion, and I personally was very impressed with them. I would say there's a slightly greater emphasis on teamwork in general with the new maps, especially with the objectives. Some of the horde defense spots are just absolutely massive and provide some really intense moments. That brings us to the new class, the Vanguard. This class utilizes a mobile electric shield that protects it from zombie attacks, and allows you to charge forward, blasting through anything in your path, including bowls. As a class, the Vanguard is a mix of support and tank, although through talents you can shift more one way or the other. The Vanguard's class ability works a little differently from all the other classes. You still have equipment charges, but it's better to think about them as a meter. Say you have 2 equipment charges. Charging forward will drain 1 charge, however, it's better to think of it as draining 50% of your equipment meter. If you raise your shield, it will slowly drain from the meter, but even if it shows that you have no equipment charges left, you might still have some of your meter remaining, which means you can raise your shield but not charge forward. It took me a little bit to figure out as it was never explained properly, but I do like that they are trying out something different. At the same time, the class felt a little underpowered, and I do hope it gets a slight buff. The shield charge is only very situationally useful, and while the block can get you out of some tight situations, I think other classes' abilities are better. Most of the talents require tight coordination with your group to really use them properly, so I think if you play solo, the class might not be as fun to use as if you have a group to play with. That said, if you do have a group of people to play with and can coordinate your strategy, I see a lot of potential uses for the Vanguard class. They also added in new guns and an overhaul to melee combat, which is available to everyone even if you don't buy the expansion outside of the extra weapons included in the deluxe edition. There's 2 new guns, the Paladin LMG and the Special SMG SR Smirch, alongside several new versions of existing guns that can be purchased with challenge points. I really like the Special SMG, however, I could not find the Paladin LMG anywhere, and I played every level multiple times, and went back and played old levels as well, so it must be rare. For new challenge point versions of weapons, there is a new T1 shotgun variant that has less power, but more accuracy and penetration, a new PDW variant that is semi-auto instead of automatic, a new advanced SMG that has less power, but more penetration, and finally a new crossbow variant that instead fires regular crossbow bolts instead of explosive ones, and can pierce through several targets. These all cost 1,000 challenge points each, so it can be a bit of a grind to get them all. Melee weapons are now categorized in light, medium, and heavy variants. They all have stats similar to the guns, and of course the light ones do less damage and are faster, while the heavy ones are the opposite. There's additional melee animations, and after several swings you will perform a signature strike which will do something different depending on your weapon's ability. For example, the dual sickles have the Blood Harvest ability that causes your signature strike to hit one additional target in range. I have to say the dual-wielding light weapons were really fun to use, and I do like the changer overall, though you have to be really careful during a signature strike. Some of the animations really open you up to attacks, so if you're not cautious, you can get yourself easily killed while doing melee attacks. That said, the mix of new abilities for melee weapons has given the Slasher class a considerable buff, and I was shocked at how much more powerful the class is now. I might even do a build guide, as I've already found a few weapons that are almost broken. They are so good when paired with a Slasher. We also got one new enemy type, rats. And when I went back to play the old maps, I did find them, so they are not limited to just the new maps. They are extremely deadly, and the trailer was not joking when it said your entire group needs to work together to deal with them. Honestly, I found them to be extraordinarily obnoxious, and they were next to impossible to kill. Luckily, they only seem to spawn in predetermined areas, so they are not a threat you have to deal with too often. While you can use guns to kill them, it takes way too long, and even some explosives have trouble taking them out. Fire works best, but it's essentially impossible to not harm the person you're trying to save. This is a problem I've seen in other games' expansions where they want to add in a new enemy type and have it be a challenge, but sometimes they just end up being more annoying than anything. Personally, this new enemy type does nothing for me, and if anything, takes away from the experience, so hopefully the devs can fine-tune the rats in future updates. But that's just me, I'm sure some people will enjoy them. And finally, there's the new first-person mode. If you saw my previous World War Z video, you'll know I was a little worried about this mode, and unfortunately I was correct. So it's nice that they added it in, but the implementation leaves a lot to be desired. One nice touch is that they did give us a separate FOV scale for first and third person, which is good because the standard FOV felt off in first person. To enable FPS mode, you have to go into the settings, and it's essentially just the camera zoomed in from third person. Unfortunately, they did not add in the ability to look down scopes or iron sights, so several weapons actually block your view when you try to aim depending on their attachments. Now, if you are desperate for a higher challenge, this certainly will add it in, as the game was designed around a third-person viewpoint. It just felt like it was lazily implemented. When you interact with an object or use melee, the camera zooms out to third person, and it can be a little jarring. My hope is that they improve this mode over time, and especially hope they add in first-person melee animations. While daily challenges were advertised alongside the new expansion, I could not find them anywhere, and I have seen Reddit posts saying that they won't be added in until a future update alongside the addition of another new zombie. This was pretty disappointing, especially considering they added in new cosmetics and challenge weapon variants, all of which are extremely expensive and require a monumental amount of grinding to obtain. I had been saving up my challenge points for weeks, so I was able to buy a few things, but I feel bad for new players. There's really no way outside of months of grinding to get even a few items. I really think they need to increase the amount of challenge points obtained from 4 and 5 skull difficulty, as what we get now is way too low. Weapons cost 1,000 points, which means you need to do 100 4 skull levels to get one weapon, which is just way too much. There's a weekly challenge that gives 350 challenge points, but that's still 3 weeks to get one weapon. But speaking of the new cosmetics, I actually liked quite a few of them, especially the ones for the new Vatican City characters, and the French level characters finally have cosmetic variants now as well. The Deluxe Edition gives you 2 additional melee weapons and a few weapon skins. Of course, this is going to be highly subjective, but I just did not see it being worth it to spend an extra $10 for them, and feel like they should have been included with the base game. Outside of those main new additions, I did notice a few other various changes as well. The sound design for weapons has been changed slightly. Now most weapons will make a noticeably different sound when you're nearing the end of your magazine. Similarly, they fixed the sound that plays when a zombie creeps up behind you. It still doesn't always work, but it does work much more consistently than it did in the past. I've always been a big fan of game design through audio cues, so I thought these were great additions. On PC, they added an AMD's new Fidelity FX Super Resolution, which is available to all players, not just one with AMD graphics cards. I tested it out, and while it did slightly help performance, I do feel like it was meant to be used at higher resolutions than what I was playing at. At 1080p, even the Ultra setting made certain textures look noticeably blurry, although I was forced to keep it on due to my PC struggling to play and record the game at the same time. On that note, I did notice the new levels being a little more difficult to run in general, especially the first new map. The area is covered in a thick fog, which looks great and really adds to the tension, but it came at a huge performance cost, so I hope they continue to optimize that going forward. Granted, I'm running an RTX 2060 and Ryzen 5 3600, so I do not have a very good setup, and I guess it's to be expected trying to play modern games while recording gameplay footage. On the flip side, my experience with the new PS5 version was excellent, or rather, it's a PS5 version running the PS4 version in backwards compatibility mode with enhanced features. The actual native PS5 and Xbox Series S and X versions will not be coming out until sometime next year. But the upgrade to 60 FPS cannot be understated, and I didn't have any major FPS dips even during Hordes. Granted, I only tested out the old maps and not the new ones, but I don't see why the PS5 shouldn't be able to handle those ones as well. I did see people reporting crashes with the new levels on the PS5, so hopefully that issue gets resolved in a future patch as soon as possible. As far as prior bugs and glitches go, I didn't notice any fixes outside of the sound cues, so do keep that in mind. So overall, while there were a few issues, it's a great expansion. Just the new maps alone added a ton of replayability for veteran players, and now is a great time for new players to jump in as well. That said, I did feel like the developers were right up against the wall with what they could do with the existing gameplay mechanics. So while I'd love more content in the future, I would rather they make a World War Z 2 instead of another expansion. And if they do go down that route, I hope they import all maps into the new game and do something like what Hitman 3 did with Hitman 1 and 2. And even the issues with first-person mode and rats, they can be fixed in future patches, so hopefully with time everything will be as good as it possibly can be. And like I said, they will be adding in native next-gen versions, alongside a new zombie and daily challenges in future updates. Not to mention the Nintendo Switch version that will be coming out later this year. So with that said, I recommend World War Z Aftermath for both new and returning players. Just do keep in mind it might take a few patches to sort out some of the issues. Although I would recommend the Standard Edition, as like I said, I personally don't think the Deluxe Edition is worth it, but that will be everyone's choice if they want to spend the extra money or not. And as always, for new players, I would strongly recommend buying this with a group of friends. Yes, there's a pretty good matchmaking system in place, but with friendly fire and team-based objectives, you will have a significantly better time with friends. For future content, I do plan on doing a few World War Z guides, and we still have a ton of new games coming out, so do watch for my Back 4 Blood review in a few weeks, and I actually did decide to review Kenna Bridge of Spirits as well. I unfortunately did not get a review code, so I'll try to get through that as quickly as possible to get out a review. But on the subject of review codes, subscribing is the best way to help me out to get them. This will give me more time to play the games I'm reviewing, as I do like to be thorough with my reviews. Thank you so much for watching, I'll see you all in the next video.